Thank you so much for being with us tonight. That was just a great screening and great crowd. And I just want to start off by asking how you came to this story, because it's an unusual story to tell, and I'm interested in how you came to it, what drew you to the project, and how it all sort of began.
I guess what kind of happened is the script came to me through my agents, and I think it came from Mike, the writer, and Peter was already attached to the project, so they sent it to me, and I think my agents were kind of like, we know you're looking for something weird, and because I was looking for something a little bit weird, and it's really hard to find something that's different, and like it's just fun to do things that are not that you can get weird with. And they were like, it's a little bit small, but we just know you're gonna like it, so you can read it, but we're not really saying you should do it. They're like, it's a good script. And I read Mike's script, and once I heard Peter was attached to it already, I'm such a huge fan of his since The Station Agent, and I just thought this is such a cool opportunity for me to just see him be a leading man again, and he is like really incredible human. And then I read Mike's script, and I just thought it's a very, very weird voice, and I love that. Probably the things about it that would drive some people crazy are the very things I loved about it, because I read so many scripts and I watch so many movies, and I almost always know what's going to happen. And for me, it was a pleasure to do something that broke all the conventions. It broke the 3-act structure, and it breaks all the tropes of a typical post-apocalyptic story. And I was like, we never really find out why the apocalypse happened, and so that's why there's like a really loud noise at the beginning of the movie, because it's actually a bowling ball, but we thought it would be that my editor Madeline and I thought maybe that's the apocalypse, but we never had those questions answered. But I realized the story is not really about that. The story is about human connection. So it felt like it's essentially a relationship movie set against a very weird scenario. And to be quite honest with you, I don't think the things that happen in the film are so far off from how crazy things are in our world right now. And I just thought there was a lot of, Mike's script was very light and maybe a little bit more comedic than where I took it. But I think I just saw all this really deep, profound, all these messages in there that I think Mike intended, and Yeah,
and I think a lot of that comes across in the way you film it, in the way that you, the sort of non-verbal aspects of the narration, but just in the very distinctive and kind of uncanny lighting and use of racking focus, and that's something that, as both the director of the film and the cinematographer of the film, I'm interested in what your relationship to the visual quality was, and how that was something that you used to shape the way the story was told, and the elements of the story that were sort of prioritized in your telling.
Well, I think I thought a lot about the lenses and how it would be lit, in the sense that I was trying to present myself with certain parameters, that I wouldn't light night scenes with anything that I was trying not to light anything with anything he wouldn't have access to in the apocalypse. So, even the scene at night when she goes outside when she's in the rain and gets into the car and she's gonna leave, that was lit only by car headlights, the headlamp, a lantern, and I snuck in, because my car that she was in, and that is my car, the headlights were really, really low. I had to use 2 Lecos to amp them up. That's literally that whole wide night exterior is lit with, because I was just like, I'm so tired of seeing movies that it's nighttime and you can see everything. And I just think if you're in the apocalypse, there's no lights. So that's why it's really dark, but also it was like, as a cinematographer, that was like my dream always, to do a movie and make it and not give a shit about fill, light, and like, you know, the scene where she's sleeping on the couch and he brings her water, that's lit all by practicals. I mean, the light on her face is coming from a napkin that I placed in front of her headlamp that's bouncing light onto her. So all the day scenes had different rules. So the day scenes, I actually used film lights outside the windows to illuminate. But as far as like the way that the movie is shot, it just kind of came out of, that's why I like sometimes shooting things myself, because I don't have to think about it. I just go where I want to go with the camera. And I knew, one thing I knew for sure was that I wanted to tell the story. I wanted to tell the story as much as possible from Dell's perspective. And so the camera is never, you probably notice you don't really see his size in relationship to the world except for like 3 times in the movie. And I just think it's the way I shot him was sort of like, I wanted to shoot him the way that I see him.
And I'm also find that the sound to be an interesting element in the film, because it's a very visual film and a very distinctive visual style that you have. But also, there's great care taken in the sound, and it's something that, I think especially seeing it in a theater really comes across, the range of levels and intensities and textures, and the ways in which you sort of come at different levels of intimacy through the sound. And I wonder how you thought of that in relation to the visual sensibility.
Well, since I moved into this other area, directing, and I'm only really shooting my own stuff from time to time. I realize now, when I was a DP, I used to come to screenings and I would tech check it. I didn't care about really anything. I just cared about how it looked. And when I come to screen a movie that I've directed, it's like all I care about is the sound. I mean, to be honest, now with DCPs, you don't really have to worry about the way it looks anymore. It just is what it is. So it's not as many variables when I was DPing and things were like actually projected, but on film. But the sound is, I think, because I was doing visuals for so long, it was like this gold mine of opportunity that I never had access to before. And I think I'm very in tune with sound, and I think it's an underutilized aspect of storytelling, and it's a way to get into people's heads. And I don't always know when I'm gonna do that when I'm shooting a movie. I maybe have hunches, and I know better now. But it's we had 37 tracks of sound in our Avid mix alone. That's before we go in and mix it with the sound designer. So that's how Madeline, my editor, and I work. We're very into sound and the projection scene and all those layers and pulling lines from the movie that's on the screen, and all these things are trying to send subliminal messages to the audience. And in the scene where she's looking at all the photographs and the voices and everything, those are like all people I know, and it's kind of a way, I think, to tell, just to take the storytelling to a more heightened place. And musically, I just think also if you're in the apocalypse, like in particular in regards to this story, every sound would mean so much to you, because it would probably be to some that it's very loud, because every little sound you would hear it. And then I thought sometimes to me it might be very quiet, and so whenever there was a real sound that would sound sort of normal to us, it would just cut through everything super loudly. And so that's sort of the story reason of why it's kind of erratic, and it's also their mental states and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think it comes across really beautifully as a way to get into Dell's subjectivity in particular, and the way that aloneness feels versus the intrusion of another person. And that's one of the things that I think is unusual about this movie, is the sort of way that it captures what it's like to go from being alone to being with people, and to determine whether you need people.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in the fact that you, coming back to the fact that's so interesting to me, that you both directed this film and DP'd it, and I believe you got your start primarily as a DP and have, now I know you mentioned that you're working on a project that you're directing that you are not the DP for, and I wonder what has your experience been of the relation between those roles and the different challenges that come with taking on both roles at the same time versus being in collaboration with a director or with a DP?
Well, I mean, the project I just finished shooting is like, this one's tiny in comparison, and the other one has we had probably 50 people in our crew on this, and that one has 400, and so it's a very different movie spanning over several continents, and so it's nice to have my DP, who's Sean Bobbitt, on that movie. There are moments, of course, where I'm like, I just wish I was doing it, but what's great about the job that I have now is I can work with other DPs, and DPs are my favorite people. And so, but I also love shooting, and I love operating the camera, and I operated the camera on this, and I've also operated the camera on the movie I'm doing with Sean too, from time to time. And we have a really close relationship now, and what I like about, I would say that doing both jobs on this was probably way easier than having someone else do it, because I know exactly what I want, and I only had 24 days to shoot it, and I had to be really fast, and all the magic hour scenes we shot at real magic hour, and I have my beat camera op is Mike Heathcote, who is my Steadicam guy also, and he did Handmaid's Tale with me, and he just knows what I like, and so there are a bunch of scenes we had to get at a certain at magic hour, and he's the only other person I trust, and so he would shoot, one camera on Ellen, I'd shoot one camera on Pete with her at dinner or whatever in the library, and I would have a 7-inch monitor right next to me, so while I was operating the camera and watching Pete, I had my left eye open, and I was watching Elle's performance, because we had all these small windows of time, but they're just things that I could do that I can't control another DP, and that's also the exciting thing about working with another DP is okay, oh, he's gonna do that with that. Okay, all right, and I just bite my tongue because I'm a DP, so I know what DPs want to be treated like. So I might be the best director for a DP to work for, to be honest, because I am ultra respectful, but I also still want what I want. And I think what was nice about this experience was that I could do whatever I wanted, and I didn't have to negotiate anything. It was just I just did it, and I didn't have to think about it. And if you have a camera that's very intuitive, like a handheld camera that's trying to tell a story, it's oftentimes a lot easier for me. I now know more about how to sort of empower my operators to do what they want to do, but it's easy. It's always been this way with me, where it's easier for me to just hold the camera, because I don't even know sometimes what I'm going to do with it. And then I set it up for myself so I can do whatever, I can allow the actors to be more free than maybe would be in another case. But then at the same time, having a combo, with Colin and Sean, Colin who did Handmaid's Tale with me, it's we create a new look that he wouldn't do on his own and I wouldn't do on my own. And it's a cool thing to have two DPs come up with a look together. So both are kind of awesome. So,
in terms of your trajectory of coming up as a DP and coming to directing within the industry, what has that presented any challenges or idiosyncrasies that are good or bad or?
Not really. I mean, I think it kind of, sometimes I'm right as I was really learning how to DP, I moved into directing. So sometimes I'm what would have been, But I also, there's no question I should be doing. For me, just not regardless of what anybody thinks of the movie, you may all hate it. But for me, for my own personal joy in life, and I urge everybody, if they're not already doing this, it doesn't really matter. It's just like whatever makes you happy. And what makes me happy is to go on these different like adventures. And I realized I don't want to put all of it in the hands of someone else. I want to look at a script and turn it in and take something that is maybe a familiar thing and try to reinterpret it in a different way, or because I do see things in a different way. So the challenge only I didn't want to leave behind DPing, and I realized that I don't have to. I can sometimes do it and sometimes not do it. So that's pretty much
the best of both worlds. Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw it out to the audience. I'm sure there are questions out there. So if you raise your hand.
Shot on the Alexa Mini, because we were shooting with these anamorphic lenses, these Lomos that you can't. The front barrel, it's boring. The front barrel spins basically, and then your matte box would just be spinning around. And so I didn't use matte box or filters like the entire movie, and so I used the Alexa Mini because it has internal NDs, and yeah.
Could you talk about some of the perspectives with? Sometimes there was a distortion to the image, and I wonder if you could talk about.
That's just one of the qualities of those lenses, and I was looking for. I tested tons of anamorphics before the film, and I was looking for exactly that effect and that quality. And it's just that, some people don't, probably a lot of people shot with these lenses, but most people don't shoot with them wide open because it's like torture for the focus puller. But I did. So, but anyone in my camera department who works with me knows that that's what they're in for. And like one of my ACs is in the audience right there. And so I'm kind of like, I want to shoot wide open because when it's emotionally right and when you want to just totally focus on the central thing in the frame, the character or whatever. And that has a really nice sort of circular effect. It's almost kind of like a lens, like a still. I was looking for like a still camera lens quality.
Now that you have done small, and it sounds like you've just done big, do you envision moving sort of back and forth? Because when you do the small, it is easier to be able to both DP and direct, and yet you have all the pluses of the big as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's just going to be dependent on what are the interesting stories to me and what I feel I could bring something new to. Because, if there's a script, it's really just about the script and it's about the characters. And if it's got well-developed characters, or I feel like I can make the characters interesting, or I can do something I haven't done before. One thing I do know is every project that I've done so far like this has been each one's been pretty different from the other. And the one I just finished it's basically like an action movie. It's like a psychological thriller, but it was probably more of if someone else had directed the same script, it would probably be just like a straight up action movie. But it's a totally perspective driven, in this one woman's perspective. And I just wanted to do it because I felt like I could do something new with it, because I like action movies too, but also it'd be cool to see one where you can feel emotionally invested as well. So I don't know if that answered the question.
There's one. There's a mic come down.
Yes, I noticed that maybe they didn't mean anything. There were a bunch of flags at the beginning, and I noticed the Gabriel Garcia Marquez book. What was that in a relationship with the story at all?
What was that last part?
The Gabriel Garcia Marquez book, The Times of Cholera?
Oh, yeah.
Was there any relation between Or was a specific reason why you chose that book, or it's just an accident?
I chose that book because that was my favorite book, and my mom introduced me to it. So sometimes I put little things into the. I also just like the idea of like this. I mean, there's other symbolism to it, but basically it's a book about unrequited love, and I like to put little symbols in the movie. I felt like in some ways that their story was almost about to become an unrequited love story, and in the moment he discovers that book is the moment she's about to like possibly leave. Anyway, yeah.
No, I just find it interesting because I recognized that relationship. Like, it was really cool. That's all.
I'm glad you noticed that.
Right there?
So since we're here at the female gaze, I feel like someone has to ask how you feel about like the image of a cinematographer, and I guess what your advice would be for women trying to break into it.
Well, I mean, I was just saying before that to Maddie that I thought it's so great that they're doing this series. It's like almost makes it seem totally normal because there's a bazillion films and they're all shot by women. And when I first started out, I didn't really know that it wasn't like it was weird for a woman to. I didn't know until I really got out of school. Because there were so few people that want to be cinematographers anyway when I went to NYU. So like, you know, there was maybe a few more guys, but there was still a few girls. And I think this time period, like this generation, is very, to them, it's a very normal concept. I think it's an antiquated perspective that only men can do it. And women, I think because they've been for a very long time still photographers and very visual, I think it feels much more natural now than it did for a while there. And I think it's the only advice I would say is just not to. For me, I think ignorance is bliss. Like I never really thought, okay, I can't get that job because I'm a woman. I just thought like, admittedly, like out of school when I was first trying to get paid work as a DP, I did dress like a little bit more sort of androgynous, so people wouldn't think I was girly, which is like, it's not really a big secret, but I'm like very girly. But that doesn't mean I can't carry a 55-pound camera, and I can actually carry it longer than most of my male counterparts. So it's not about what you look like or how people perceive you. It's about how you perceive yourself.
Hey, so earlier you were talking about how, as you were the DP in this film, you felt like the actors felt like they had more choices and control over it. So when you were directing them, how did that balance sort of in that relationship pan out as you were DPing them, making sure they looked great visually, but also getting that raw performance from them?
You have to be a good, I think in order to do it, you have to be a good multitasker. You have to be able to like simultaneously, like a lot of times, and I did this on Meadowland, my first feature as well, but you kind of you're watching the light, like it's about time management as well. And I don't sit there and like noodle the lighting like I used to when I was just a DP, because it's like, that was my whole job. So of course I would second guess everything and like redo stuff. And as a director, it's like the moment it looks good, I'm just like, I just walk away, you know? And also you kind of, once my actors know that I'm gonna DP the movie, it's like they're just hanging out on set with me, and I might like be at the same time kind of watching what's happening with the lighting, but I'm talking to them about the character. And it's really about just being able to split your brain in two places. But for me, when people have asked me before, like, well, how do you feel about DP and directing at the same time? I had actually asked my friend, one of my friends who had done it, I asked him what he thought, and he was like, don't do it. It's terrible. It's the worst. He's like, I'll never do it again. And then I went and did it, because I just felt like, I don't know if I'm gonna feel that way. And the first day, I was like, oh my God, this is the worst idea ever. And then once I figured out like rhythmic, like how you manage your time, and also what was, what I realized is the story is more important to me. But as I've evolved as a DP, the more important the story has become, ironically, and the less like noodling I've done with the cinematography, ironically, I think for myself personally, my cinematography got better. And also probably because I have the freedom to do what I want. I don't have to like try to please someone else. I'm just pleasing myself. And I think if you can do one of those jobs with your eyes closed, then you could probably do both of them really well together. If one of them is sort of just like a natural extension of the way you do things, and that's how like operating camera and cinematography is for me, is like, I might not be as amazing as like some DPs out there, but for me, just to get what I want, I don't have to think very hard about it. I barely put any thought into it at all. I do all my prep beforehand, and then I really prepare my gaffer and my key grip about what I'm going to want to do, and then I just sort of do it. And if the plan doesn't work, I can think really fast on the fly. When we run out, it's like if something's not working, I just make a quick change. But it's not impossible. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that when you were approached with this project, Peter Dinklage was already approached to act. The other actors, did you have them in mind when you were working on this project? Did you go out to them, or did they reach out to the project to be cast? So just wanted to know about that process.
It was just Pete. And Peter was already a producer on it, and so then basically the way that it worked for the rest of the process was Peter and I would sort of decide whenever I'm working when I have one main lead actor, I always kind of consult with them about who I want to bring in. And so Pete and I put our heads together, and Elle was who we thought of right away, because we felt like Grace is a really tricky character, and as written, she was written very annoying. Like, if you thought she was annoying in the movie, I'm sorry, but she was actually way more annoying on paper. And we were like, we need to have somebody who has this natural magical charm about her that you can't help but like her, And that's Elle. And Elle is a magical person. And we just kind of were like, it's gotta be her. And of course the other producers agreed. And so we went out to her. And as far as Paul, I had worked with Paul Giamatti on Billions, and he and I had a great time. And he's like such a weirdo, but like the most awesome person ever. And we were like, this would be so fun to do this with Paul. I mean, maybe it's a little bit like typecasting, which I usually don't want to do, but I just couldn't help it because I had so much fun working with him. And I've always been obsessed with Charlotte, like really obsessed with her. And I just think that character is kind of like, she's a strange one, and she's sort of maybe partially had this sort of brain adjustment done on her. And I just had a feeling that Charlotte there's something otherworldly about her anyway in person. And so there's something kind of, also just the combination of Charlotte and Paul is the weirdest combination ever. So I was like, let's do that. We were just trying to do, it's like when you're making a movie that's smaller, those are the ones that you can take those kinds of risks on. But also it's like, what a great cast. And it's like, kills me. I can't tell anyone that we made a commitment to ourselves. We weren't going to tell anyone Charlotte and Paul were in the movie, because we really want it to be a big surprise that they come in, but now it's kind of like on the internet, but they're not on the poster. And like the other day I said to the producers, like, should we just put their names on the poster? It's like, and they're like, no, it should be a surprise. I'm like, have you Googled our movie lately? Because it's not really a big surprise anymore. But anyway, maybe it was a surprise for some of you.
I just had a question about the color palette that I noticed throughout the film, like a lot of blue with yellow, and at the end a lot more red that I noticed. How were those decisions kind of influential in your storytelling, or where did that come to be?
Well, a big part of like lighting for me is what you put in front of the lights. And so I'm very obsessed with curtains, and my production designer, Kelly McGeehee, who's amazing, one of the things I do with my production designer and Mira and my costume designer is I basically take a whole bunch of pictures that are colors I like, and then I give those colors to those departments and say, this is the only colors that are going to be in the movie. I did it on Meadowland too. And it's sort of like an inspiration, and like also it gives those creative people this challenge. And I don't know, I mean, I guess one of the things I'm very obsessed with are curtains. Sounds so boring. I have no life. So I have an iCloud album that's just curtains, like that I've seen in locations I take pictures of, and then I say to like Kelly, like, let's get these curtains, let's make these curtains. And they're usually like really weird curtains you can't find anywhere. But I just like the light, the way the light comes through them. And so we ended up doing kind of, we scouted a lot of real people's houses, and that's where a lot of that inspiration came from. And I think just the color palette was sort of, I wanted to have two stark differences. And then in his room, I didn't want it to be like all blue. I wanted there to be one mismatched curtain. And so anyway, Kelly made, she made all those curtains and did the mismatched curtain, which was good, because otherwise it would have been too much of, it would have been like a superhero movie with the blue and the orange, which it kind of, it's like a played out color palette, but I mean, I like it. Probably won't do, I didn't do that on the next movie. We did something different, so anyway.
It's interesting because with so few characters, the production design really takes center stage and really is, maybe more noticed than it would be if there were more people populating the screen.
Yeah, no, it was very important. That's why I was having Kelly and her team was really amazing. And we didn't have a lot of money on this movie, obviously, but that challenge that presented was we had to shoot in a lot of different houses. And so we were like, how are we going to dress all these houses? How are we going to, because normally you take a house, you take everything out of it, and then you put in it what you want. In our case, we went through like this crazy situation where we scouted a whole bunch of houses that just looked like everybody bought their stuff at Ethan Allen or Pottery Barn, and like maybe that's a nice house to live in, but it was not the houses I wanted to shoot in. And so I started to be like Kelly and I were like, you have to tell these people, first of all, we have to find the neighborhoods that have these kinds of houses with character. And then when you say we're coming to look at the house for location, tell them not to clean up their house. So we wanted all the house for the most clutter. So long story short, the houses we shot in, a lot of the stuff that's in the houses were stuff that was actually in those houses. And we made up those families based sometimes off of the real families. And then we, Kelly would add stuff. So she did dress things, but it was just like a lot less, it was like a crazy job for art department, so.
Wow. I think we have time for one more question. I could keep going, but if there's anyone in the audience.
Hi, Reed. I don't know if you can see me from here. It's Gendra.
Hi, Gendra.
Hi. Fellow woman DP, for those of you who were
Another, she's an amazing female DP, obviously female, you could tell.
Thank you very much. My question is related to how you have embraced your role as a role model. And a lot of people are very uncomfortable with that role, and I've been very impressed as your career success has grown and grown and grown, how you've recognized how important that is and how you've given to the community. And I've seen a lot of people have little projects here and there, and then they crash and burn, and been really impressed with your trajectory of going up and up and up and up with every new opportunity. And I was wondering if you would share with the audience, in keeping with your role model status, what have you learned in all of these encounters that you've had with the success that you've had? How have you had to develop yourself as a person, as an artist, as a director, as a leader? And what do you wish that you knew before that you maybe have learned the hard way or the easy way, or that other people would love to hear some advice from you?
Well, I mean, I know for a long time, when I was coming up, when I was starting out as a DP, I was too shy to go to my role models and ask and try to meet them and ask for help. And I kind of just was like, I'm going to do it on my own. That's it, you know? And I've had a lot of people have come and worked with me that were kind of like, you know, they went after what they want, and I admire that a lot about these people, that they see someone that they're like, I admire what you do, and I want to learn from you. And I just think that being proactive like that, I wish I had been more proactive like that, because there was a lot of years where nothing happened, and I sometimes wonder why, you know, if I had done things differently and I had, like, you know, not been afraid to ask for help. Because I do think you can learn a lot from others. Especially now I'm working with, work with other DPs, or just working with other directors as a DP definitely informed me, like, moving into the directing role. And I think, you know, just being in this position now, I look at people who do come and ask for help, and I'm like, that's like cool. That's good that you did that. That's like cool that you did that. And like, I don't know if I can help you, but I try. And like, I think, you know, we're just trying to learn as much as possible from others. That's what I probably could have learned a lot of stuff a lot more quickly, but I did it like just very organically, like I was the only person with a camera on Earth. And so for a long time, I didn't like know how to do half the stuff. So anyway, I'm just saying, like, that's a good way to go. And I think just as far as the aspect of being in a role model position, I think you have to be the person that you would want to work for. And I know you've been through this, and you work for a lot of directors, and as a DP, you're in this position where you kind of get what you're going to get. And then you're the DP. You can't just quit every job if you suddenly don't like the director you're working with. And so I always thought, even before I was a DP and I was a key grip, I thought, I had some bad experiences, and I thought, God, I'm just never gonna be that guy. And I'm always gonna appreciate how hard my crew works for me and how dedicated they are, because I'm that person. And I think as long as I think some directors have not worked in crew. That doesn't mean they're not appreciative. I've had those amazing directors who've never worked in crew, but it helps if you've been there. You want to be the kind of person you would want to be your boss, you know, and like you want to be the kind of person that you can, like, after you've done something, be like, yeah, I did that the right way. I didn't make a fool of myself. Like, I wasn't a jerk. And, you know, even with all that stress, everybody comes away from it feeling really good about what they did. And I guess just, I also, in general, not just on set, but I think more about what I say, and I definitely have a point of view on certain things that I've had to sort of, I keep some things to myself now, because you have to sort of watch what you say in public, you know, when a lot of people are listening to you. And there's some things you might want to put out there, and then there's other things maybe just keep to yourself, you know. I don't know if that answers it, but.
I think that was a great note to end on. So thank you so much.
Thank you.